5, 4, 3. CGP Video Pictures presents Trek Tonight, Season 3. This week, Doctor Who. With your hosts, Christopher Pitcher, Leo Byrne-Janicek, and Gina Pitcher. Tonight's review, The Church on Ruby Road. And now live from New York City and Wilmington, Delaware, it's Trek Tonight. Hey there, Whovians, and welcome once again to Trek Tonight. We are going to round out this little series on Doctor Who. And of course, we had an episode that was on Christmas Day. And that was an episode that introduced us to our new Doctor, as well as a new companion, and also possibly a villain. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But how are you guys? Obviously, Keith is here. Gina is not. Either that or Keith is transitioning into Gina. I don't know which it is. But so if that's the case, we assist you in your journey.
My pronouns are confused.
Yes.
Anyway,
we do honor your choices.
yes, we do.
At
Any rate, yeah, how you guys doing? How was your holiday?
well, I went down to Delaware. I got to spend Christmas with the Pitchers, which was lovely. And rather than go into like minute detail about it, we had a good time. And I'm my gift for both Chris and Keith, and I sent mine to Keith. And I know. Let's see if you can see it. Yes.
Yeah, look at that.
This is.
That's gorgeous.
You know what?
Loved it.
Why does yours show up better than mine?
I don't know.
I'm drinking mine and I can't read it.
Do you have a dark liquid in yours?
Coke.
It might be the lighting or the thing.
Maybe. But yeah, they were beautiful. And I
loved mine. Yes, I love mine.
Actually shed a tear when I
He was very choked up. I was touched.
I was very choked up.
But
Problem with it is now I'm terrified to use it.
Oh yeah, because
So it is up on a very high shelf with my other glassware, and I take it out
where little hands can't get to it.
Yeah, use it very carefully and then put it away. But yeah, that was lovely. Thank you.
There's a host exclusive bit of merch. Although I suppose if you're really ambitious, you could go out and have them made yourselves.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be a nice little way to honor us. But
it was lovely. Yes, thank you.
Christmas is over for about a little over 2 weeks now, something like that. And we're now in the Monday of months, January. So why don't we dive right into Doctor Who?
Yes,
let's do that.
Doctor Who. Woo!
So
it was I said last week, because we got to see a bit of the new Doctor last week. I mean, the last episode. Not last week, but the last three. And I liked him right away, which usually doesn't happen. It usually takes me a couple of episodes to get adjusted and accustomed to whoever the new Doctor is. But something about him is very engaging, and he sort of has a different tone. He's just very up and very positive all the time.
I like that. It seems unburdened by a lot of the trauma that his previous incarnations had.
Right.
And it's a delight to see, because you would think, why? Yeah,
I think this is the only picture that I found of him not smiling.
I mean, and he's still kind of smiling.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like every one of them, he's got like a big grin on his face.
Yeah.
Chudagawa is a delight to watch. I love his first appearance. Well, not really, because he shows up in the very opening at the church, the titular church on Ruby Road.
Right. Well, and that's what that is. That's what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but the first time we see him is he's dancing in a club, and he's got a kilt and a, a, tank top, and he's just like living his best life. And
Right.
it is wonderful to watch because it is so engaging. And our new companion, Ruby Sunday, sees him there, and she's like sort of immediately drawn to him.
Mm-hmm.
And she is sort of this cursed, kind of cursed figure. I mean, a little bit, although she's very upbeat, but she's having this big run of bad luck. She's
Right.
getting fired. She's dropping stuff. She's, somebody, she doesn't care for, asked her out, all these things. Um, but, there is a method to what's going on. There's a reason for it, as we discover later on. But she also has a very positive energy, which I think matches the doctor's nicely.
Yes.
She is a what they call a foundling, which is really more of a sort of an antiquated term. There she is, adorable, very adorable. And she's a part of a foster family. There she is with the doctor. And
here's her.
her foster mom, but really her mom, because she raised herself. And there's this wonderful, they have this wonderful home life. They obviously everybody cares for each other. The grandmother, who was like, I can't get a cup of tea, and she's very, I mean, in that sort of like salty way that shows that she still cares. She's not being
Yeah.
She's not like genuinely like put off. She's just sort of like, well, I guess I'll never have that cup of tea,
I've decided I'm going for abstinence now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Is her mom? Did she really adopt her, or is she still a foster kid? Because later on, he refers to her as her daughter.
I think she's adopted. I think
she's adopted. She did. She did adopt her. But she also, as we see, she's fostered like this, and they get a new baby. It's like on Christmas Eve, and they this adorable little baby by the name of Lulubelle, a name that everybody despises except for the doctor, who thinks it's wonderful.
Baby, but there she is.
Yeah. The baby is adorable. I mean, as if all babies are by default adorable. But it was the 33rd foster she had done, and their refrigerator is covered with pictures, and we find out like a lot of these kids still keep in contact with her.
Right.
And she's this wonderful, like motherly person. You just want her to hug you, and there's it's nice because it's like there's been a lot of tragic backstories in literature, and I think it's become much more prevalent these days. I think there's so many tragic backstories, and it gets a little much after a while. But even though she doesn't know who or Ruby doesn't know who her parents are, she still like has a mom, and she has a home,
right,
which is lovely. And so I quite like that. She also, in the beginning of the episode, yes, her coat.
I love her coat, Gina says.
Yeah, she's quite the fashion.
Yeah.
Pate. Is it plate or pate?
Yes, plate.
She's very she has a sense of fashion.
Yes.
But she goes on at the beginning. She's on a TV show with an actual BBC presenter by the name of Davina McCall. I'm not familiar with her because I don't.
She's a real personality.
Yeah, she's real British.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Because I did a little digging. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, did they just hire an actress who could be a presenter? I've seen some critics saying like maybe she should stick to presenting, but I thought she was fine.
She was fine.
She was fine. I mean, she didn't have to do any tearful, heavily dramatic bits, but it's sort of like having, I know Robin Roberts, guest star on, some current American sci-fi show.
Right.
But yeah, and she starts getting, after she interviews Ruby, where they're going to do like, it's like find out your roots, like, because she doesn't know anything about her family. And she's like, well, we don't know, your parents might not, your birth parents might not want to contact you. It's happened, but we're going to do it. And they also find out they can't find anybody,
Right.
nobody, and it's like a dead end,
which is kind of strange.
It's just strange, coupled with the fact that she was left on a church doorstep on Christmas Eve,
right,
by
a mysterious cloaked figure.
Yes, so there's a lot of theories about what that is, but maybe we'll get into that later.
Yeah,
but the new baby is abducted by goblins, literal goblins who are in a flying ship hovering above London.
As you do.
As they do, yes. There's Janice, as we find out her name,
the
lead singer. There's this big song and dance number where the Goblin King, who looks a little bit like the
Jabba the Hutt.
Little Jabba the Hutt, but also, did you ever see the movie Weird Science?
Oh yeah.
Where the older brother was played by Bill Paxton, who was the bully. Got transformed into this like troll toadish figure, and he wasn't nearly as big as the Goblin King, who is mighty indeed.
Now, who else was reminded of Labyrinth during that whole bit?
Anybody else? There was. Because it was puppetry. It wasn't CG, which I was delighted.
It was puppetry, and the music sort of had a Labyrinth vibe to it.
Yeah, it did. It was
very song and dancey, and
there's a whole song that they sing about eating the babies. Eating babies.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's a little earwormy. It's definitely got a beat, and you could dance to it. And I love the fact that the Doctor and then Ruby sing as sort of a distraction while they're rescuing this baby.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the first time I've ever seen that on Doctor Who, and I thought that was delightful. I should say I'm not a huge musical fan by default. Like something being a musical is not an instant sell for me, although there are musicals I like.
Right.
So, but if you can do it well, why not?
Yeah, sure.
And it is funny because the goblins were all very wee. Like they maybe came up to your kneecap. They were not. They were. It just feel like you could kick those goblins around if you had to. But I know, Keith. I've been talking a lot. What are your thoughts?
I love the dance bit. I thought the dance and singing bit was fantastic. I really liked how they I really like kind of like one thing you didn't mention was so early in the episode, the Doctor's actually following Ruby around because the Doctor knows that there's something up with Ruby, and I'm not sure if he's following Ruby or the goblins, but anyway, he's there.
Yeah,
he's there to chase him, and he basically has a snowman. Let me phrase that. So on the side of at one point on the side of a building, there's this inflated snowman on the side of a building, and the goblins are trying to drop that onto Ruby. Well, the Doctor sees it, and he takes out his sonic screwdriver, which, by the way, I'm not a fan of the new sonic screwdriver. But it looks. I think a sonic screwdriver should look like a screwdriver, not a TV remote. But yeah.
Right.
But
it's better than a pair of sunglasses. So
it's better than
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Score one for Chris. Score one for Chris. That's right. But anyway, he uses sonic screwdriver, changes the street lights, so Ruby gets through safely, and then there's this pram, this woman walking a pram. By the way, it's midnight, and so he goes running to save her. The snowman falls on him. He comes out, and here's the part I like. The police officer comes out and tries to take a report, and his screwdriver pings, and the Doctor's able to tell the police officer everything that's going to happen to him in the immediate future regarding the wedding, the engagement ring that's in his pocket. That she's going to say yes, and then the reason why she loves him. And I just thought that was kind of cool. The little bit that the Doctor did.
Apparently that was a Disney suggestion.
Really?
The police officer, which I rather liked, because he's very the guy's like, well, his name, the Doctor, occupation, not a doctor.
Yep.
like address that blue box down there.
Yeah.
And he's just very like, the usual sort of bit of nonsense that the doctor likes to sort of throw out at the, the sort of the normies.
Right.
But great change. But also when he comes out and he talks to the police, that's great. There was such a lovely moment because he said, he says, Sonic Ping, there's a diamond, 2-carat diamond, and I know she's going to say yes because the sale starts on Tuesday, but you couldn't wait.
Right. Yeah, it was a cute moment. It really was.
Well, it also reinforces the idea of the doctor being like a kind person or being. I mean, I'm not saying person seems like too small a word for the doctor, but his compassion, which is I think one of the underlying sort of bedrocks of the character in the series. So, yeah, I agree with you, Keith. I like that bit.
Oh, okay. Hey, I'm sorry. We had some comments here that I didn't see come up.
Cool.
I know what Gina's talking about when she says the scene made her cringe. You're talking about the baby being pushed down the conveyor belt into the slobbering maw of the. I'm pretty sure that's what you mean. I don't know. Maybe not. John Van Gostein. John, Happy New Year. Doctor Who specials were great. New episodes this spring. That is
yes.
We will. Yeah. We're going to be looking forward to that. Gina says yes. The goblins.
F those goblins.
She also says, I don't know why she's not just coming in here and being on the show, but she also says that she likes the Doctor more carefree than he is.
I do too. He's the last ever since Eccleston. He's been getting sort of like there's been a heaviness to the character. Not overall, but like it sort of peeks through. There's a lot of like there's the Time Wars and all the stuff that's troubled him. And this Doctor seems to know what happened, but he's like it's like a fresh start.
Yeah.
Whereas the 14th Doctor is sort of getting family therapy by being able to like you can stop and relax, which I like too. But I do like his carefree nature. It's in a way that is it's just fun. It just made it enjoyable because I'm rambling.
Well, I think part of that, Carrie, is just the charisma Shudigawa brings.
Oh my God, yes.
The man oozes charisma out of every single pore of his body. I saw him in the TV show Sex Education. He was fantastic in that. That's a Netflix show, if anyone's interested. I super recommend it. But he just, there have been very few actors I've seen that I have just liked as much right from the get-go as Shudigawa is. I have high hopes that Gatwa is going to be, is going to replace Tennant as my favorite Doctor.
Yeah, I don't know whether he will for me either, or whether he will or not. But he's definitely one of my favorites of the recent ones.
I agree. I also hats off to the return of Russell T Davies.
Yes,
because it's like I don't want to knock the other people who worked on the show because there've been a lot of really good Doctor Who, but it feels like a return to sort of the an ironic return to the return because after like Doctor Who had been sort of off the air for a little while before it came back with Eccleston going what I would call this sort of the the Doctor Who Renaissance maybe.
Right.
They had a little more money. The episodes were an hour long versus a half hour, which they all used to be. So who knows? It's I'm interested to see where it goes, and I like the vibe of it. I know Gina agreed. Thank you, Gina. It is interesting. Also, we heard the Doctor use the word mavity.
Yes,
which is sticking, which I'm delighted about.
I am too. Yeah, Gina and I watched it again today because it's a few days since Christmas, and Yeah, we both chuckled over that. That was great.
Well, let's slow down a second here. I think it's more than just a gag. This has been going on now. So we have in special number 2,
Right.
in
Probably
special
Honor.
number 2, we have the TARDIS crashing into the apple tree above Isaac Newton.
Right.
And because of their interactions with Newton, he uses the word mavity instead of gravity.
Right.
Later in that same episode, they're on the spaceship, and Donna uses the word mavity instead of gravity. And that time, the Doctor noticed it. The Doctor noticed that Tennant noticed that she used the word mavity. And I forget when the next time the word mavity was used, but I know there was at least one other time the word mavity was used between that one and this one. So they keep using that word mavity.
Well, they've changed time.
They have changed time, and I think that's going to come back.
Yeah.
That is going to come back. That's not just a gag.
Right.
It is interesting. There is a sort of this new sort of tone for the Doctor. Has a more, it's around to say fantastical because it's always been rather fantastic.
Right.
But it's almost like more magical because in that episode where mavity was said to Sir Isaac Newton, the surprisingly hot Sir Isaac Newton.
Yeah.
It's
novel Newton.
Yes, when the Doctor spread salt to keep the imposters away, he was talking about being at the edge of the universe. He's sort of changing things,
right?
And in the giggle, when they finally have the toy maker in the box, Kate Lefford Stewart says, "Put this in our most secure vault and surrounded by salt."
Right.
And I think the idea of the goblins, because they don't explain why or how the goblin ships work or what they, but there is the idea that sort of a more magical or almost a fantasy element has crept into the world.
Yeah, I buy that. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a neat sort of tone to explore. I mean, they've had sometimes like, oh, it's a dragon, but then it turns out to be an alien or a robot or something like that.
Right.
Not really Scooby-Doo, but it's never like,
no, I know.
But I'm kind of down for that. I'm, the language of ropes. It was the vocabulary of ropes.
Ropes, yes.
When they're tied up on, they get up on the goblin ship to rescue the baby, and they get tied up, and also the Doctor says, I spent a very sweaty summer with Harry Houdini. Now, there was a reference to the Doctor spending a summer with Houdini in a previous episode, and I don't remember which one.
Gina brought that up when we were watching it.
Yeah. So
I don't know if she's still here, but
Sweaty has definitely a bit of a slightly erotic undertone to it. But I love the idea that the Doctor isn't like, well, doesn't make sense to me. He's like, there's always these like weird stuff. And wasn't there an episode, and I feel like it was a Smith episode, which is that he spoke baby, that the Doctor spoke baby.
It could be.
Oh, you're right. Yes, I do remember that.
They didn't really get to explore it this time, but it's like some baby, and it was good. And he was like, "You speak baby, of course," So, yeah, it's kind of a. I like this new sort of fantastic that he's like run on the rooftops. That was great.
Yeah.
I like the fact that he changes his outfits too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what Gina was saying to me earlier. She was like, does he have a new shirt? He always seems to have the leather coat.
Yes, the leather coat is his signature piece.
Yeah.
But he's got like different shirts.
What did you guys think of the gloves?
I like the gloves.
Did you catch the joke when he says you got to love the glove?
There you go. A little saucy there, Doctor.
A little sauciness there, yeah.
I like it. It's interesting because it's weird because I'm not sure we'll see the gloves again. Sometimes they have these things and they're just there for the moment.
Yeah.
Although it would be disappointing if they don't show up again.
Yeah, I think.
But I don't want Doctor Who to turn into Tony Stark.
Right.
With like too many gadgets. I mean, the Doctor's real superpower is his voice.
Yeah.
The way he talks his way out of stuff, more than like I've got this clever gadget. With the exception of
The baby one was with James Corden.
Oh, okay.
That episode where he says he speaks baby.
Yeah. Before James Corden revealed himself to maybe be not as.
What was something for Dad, Gina? What were you talking about? I don't remember. Something for Dad. The new companion is something for Dad, but now Cliff Diamond is here.
Oh,
Cliff, how are you doing?
He says, "Have you talked about Mrs. Flood yet?" No,
we're getting there. We're getting there, sir.
We're getting
there. That has been the subject of much discussion online.
Yeah.
Mrs. Flood, the neighbor, when we first see her, she's super crabby and she's yelling at this neighbor Abdul because the police box, there she is.
Yeah.
In a better mood. She's complaining to Abdul, who is a neighbor. He's like, I'm on to you. I know you look at me. And, like there's this blue police box sitting in the middle of the street.
Right.
Or the sidewalk, rather. She's accusing him to do it. He says, why would I do that? And how would I do that?
Yeah.
And then, later on, we're sort of jumping ahead because she has a transformation. Because the goblins bibble back in time. Because the doctor complains that the goblins aren't time travelers. Because apparently they feed on coincidence and luck. It's a little vague. And I just watched it again. And I was trying to figure out, but the fact that they got a baby on the same day, the same birthday as Ruby, and she's a foster, and all this stuff, and that's they were all the little accidents were being caused by goblins. She said, "Well, all accidents caused by goblins?" He's like, "No, well, maybe."
Yeah.
But she's later, and then after they've got the baby back and everything is fine, but the Grace, Grace was Ruby's mom. She's like, oh, it's such a coincidence because of this and because of this. Oh, you were a foster too. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And there's like this thunderstorm brewing above them. And then the doctor runs out and checks something, comes back, and Ruby's gone. And the apartment's different. And Grace is like, I don't, it's like, I'm only taking these fosters for the extra money and all this stuff. And she's like cynical.
Yeah, it becomes like a It's a Wonderful Life tone shift,
It is very much like that.
Thoroughly, and she's not into the whole thing, and
Although he says, "Why are you crying?" Because clearly, without Ruby there, like her life was diminished. So he figures out that the goblins have gone back in time to try to steal Ruby when she was a baby.
Right, and that's why she's not there.
Why she's not there, and he runs off, hops on the TARDIS, goes back, and they're just about to take her, and the gloves come back. The ship is hovering over this very picturesque church, like in the north near Manchester, which was referred to earlier in the episode.
Right.
And he basically pulls the ship down reversing the gloves.
And he kills the Goblin King.
Yeah, it is. It's unusual because the doctor, he wasn't trying to. The only thing I could say is it wasn't like, I'm going to kill this MFer. But
that also really took me. What did you guys think? I mean, we're talking about what did you guys think of that? That took me by surprise. When all of a sudden the Goblin King gets skewered by the steeple, I was like, "Whoa!"
That was here's the thing.
What did you think, Keith? Because it
did take me by surprise. But I mean, there have been, but like Lee was starting to say, it was sort of accidental. He was just trying to, crash the ship, and the Goblin King got in the way. So just like in superhero comic books, where Batman may not kill and Superman doesn't kill and the Flash doesn't kill. Often those supervillains do seem to die in some pretty tragic, accidental ways until they're not dead anymore.
Right.
So
So I'm thinking this is like that.
it is also possible the Goblin King might come back. We don't know the nature of these goblins.
That's true.
No, and it's interesting because he makes a comment at some point that they're not time travelers.
Yeah.
But they clearly are because they go back to get Ruby.
Well, they say they bibble about in time, which is,
And,
I don't know if that's a British term that I'm unfamiliar with.
and let's face it, the Doctor is what's the word I'm looking for? He's kind of when it comes to time travel, he is kind of looks down on other forms of time travel, like that thing that
the thing that Jack Harkness had.
That Jack Harkness,
right.
He said it's nasty way to time travel. I don't recommend it. It's like it's much worse than traveling around with the TARDIS.
Gina,
so
it's called. Gina, what's it called? The thing that Jack Harkness had. If you're
right, and River Song used it as well.
Yeah.
But the point is,
the Doctor ended up using it at some point,
and he did use it in the Big Bang when he. But the point is, he just kept saying, "Oh, nasty way to time travel. Don't recommend it. It's quick and dirty. Quick and dirty." I think was the phrase he used.
Right.
So
there was an implication that it was not maybe that if you used it too much, it would not be good for your health.
Right. So yes,
he's a little bit of a snob. I mean, he's a Time Lord after all.
Yeah.
So that maybe comes with that. So they have some sort of. They're not strictly time travelers, but as they bibble about in time. Again, if anybody knows if bibble is a British expression means to like mess. It sounds like it might be like they mess around with time.
Right.
But it was, but he does rescue her, and he sees the hooded figure who left her, and he doesn't follow her, which I'm glad he doesn't, because it's a mystery. I think that we'll find out later on,
right,
who her mom was.
Yes,
a lot of theories about that on the interwebs. But when he comes back, now everything is fixed, and even Mrs. Flood, who was very tetchy about everything, is suddenly, much more agreeable. Which is the question: like, is that a result of, sort of meddling in time? Is she had a better life and maybe not as salty? Any thoughts?
There is nothing online about Bibble.
Okay.
By the way, so that's.
Yeah. It might be a made-up thing, or I might have misheard it. But I think that's what he said.
No, Bibble, you did not mishear it. I heard,
right.
Or at least if you misheard it, I misheard it in the exact same way.
Right. Well, it's a new word. That's okay.
Yeah, right. Bibble.
It's Bibble about some time.
But yeah, so Mrs. Flood. Cliff asked about Mrs. Flood.
And I'm gonna throw this back out. Gina is guessing that she's connected to the toy maker or the master, but
possible. A theory I read is that one of many is that she's actually Susan, who is the first Doctor, William Hartnell's granddaughter. Because if you he had his granddaughter and then two teachers from her school. All three of them were, traveling about in time. And it was, interestingly enough, Doctor Who was actually started out as a little more slightly educational. They go to different. I'm not even sure he had a sonic screwdriver in the very beginning.
Right.
They were just traveling about. Those episodes are very slow moving. I happened to watch. They did an anniversary a number of years ago, where they'd show a bunch of episodes from the first Doctor, second Doctor, and so on.
Right.
On BBC America, and I was watching the first. I was like, "Oh, I've never seen it." I'm like, "Wow, this is slow." And the Doctor didn't seem nearly as on top of it as he does today. The characters evolve, and that's fine. So there have been a few references to Susan sort of throughout the years, but it's entirely possible she is that. Cliff says the Ranny.
Yeah, I saw that.
From a special, I believe, one I've not seen, although they've appeared in comics and books. For the Doctor, I don't know anything about the Rani, so I can't really speak to it either yay or nay. But a lot of fans are like, saying that might be what it is. The other big theory is that she's somehow connected to River Song and the pond.
Interesting.
Because ponds, river, flood, all the water themed.
Right.
I kind of hope it isn't.
Yeah.
It would be a little too twee.
Yeah.
I mean,
sweet wa.
My only problem with most of those theories is that if it's Susan or or someone related to the master or someone related to the toy maker or even the Rani, you'd think they would recognize the TARDIS.
But
she does.
At the very end.
At the end, she does. But when she's kvetching about it on the sidewalk, she's kvetching about a police box like she has no idea.
Interesting, isn't
it? That it's a TARDIS. It's not till at the end of the show that she recognizes it as a TARDIS.
Well, and it's not. Or let's look at it this way, Keith. It's not until after the Doctor goes back in time and resaves Ruby and comes back.
So, but.
And the goblins disappear. So she definitely changes between the beginning of the episode and the latter portion of the episode.
So let's think that through a minute.
Yeah, something happened.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, it's Susan. All right, let's say, for instance, it's Susan.
Okay.
Let's for the sake of argument, it was Susan.
Right.
Was it Susan before the Doctor goes back in time? Because if it was Susan then, if it was Susan before the Doctor goes back in time, Susan should still have recognized the TARDIS.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not a mistake.
Right.
Sure it's on purpose. Yeah.
So I have a hard time believing it's anybody who would have previously been aware that that was the TARDIS.
Unless it was an act where she's like, because she has this persona as the, cranky old neighbor lady.
Right. Right. It could be that, or it could be that something occurs that changes her perspective.
So what if that's the woman who was walking away in the court churchyard at night?
Could be.
Could be. There's she also says it directly to the camera, like he's never seen a TARDIS.
Right.
It was, which is not the first time they've had a character speak directly to the camera.
Right.
In past Doctor Who episodes. So I don't know. There's definitely questions, and I'm glad that there isn't anything too obvious.
Right. Right.
Although people may disagree with that, some people says yes. Some people, Cliff says, some say the cloaked woman is Ruby. She has the same shoes. The idea that Ruby gives birth to herself. That is another theory out there. So,
I hope that's not it. That's going to give me time travel PTSD syndrome. That's going to give me bootstrap paradox.
That was actually one of the. That was one of the other instances of the Doctor speaking to the camera. It was Capaldi did that. So it says, or just dropped her off. Who says it's her mom?
Yeah. Gina thinks the mom is a time traveler.
Entirely possible. I mean, that's the thing is with a show like Doctor Who, it's gotten, a bit sort of, as they say, timey-wimey about things. So it is also towards the end, he saves Davina McCall, who had been impaled by the star on top of a Christmas tree.
Yes.
And she called up Ruby, wanted to tell her that they couldn't find anybody. Like, have you been having all these accidents? I've been having all these. She's like, I fell out of a boat on dry land.
Yeah.
And she's got like her arm in a sling and her leg in a cast, and she's sitting.
Did she say she got trod on by a moose?
A moose. And I'm like, there are moose in England?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, a moose is nothing to to fuck around with.
Yeah,
Moose
right.
are
Yeah.
very dangerous creatures.
Yes.
So she's had this, clearly this is all the work of the goblins because you see like a little green arm, like,
Yeah.
like unscrewing the base of the Christmas tree. But
Right.
that looked like a really gruesome hand. Like, she's like, and this like very sharp silver stars.
Yeah.
But the doctor does, in a way that he doesn't usually do. Like, he's like, oh, hold on. He hops into the TARDIS and catches it, saving her life. So,
Yeah.
well, here's the thing. Like, if the goblins die in the past, I don't think they die. I don't think, because I'm not sure the Goblin King dies, or maybe it's a different goblin. Like when the Goblin King dies, like who becomes the new Goblin King?
Right.
I'm sure there's some process there, but so they're stopped in the past. So would all the circumstances that led the Doctor to meeting Ruby not happen if they weren't there to do it?
Yeah, I don't
Not
know.
if, not if. I don't believe. I don't believe I'm making this. I don't believe I'm the one making this argument. No, because the ones that died in the past were the ones that time traveled to the past from the future.
Right.
So those are the future goblins who died in the past.
Yeah.
Okay.
But interesting because when they have Ruby, they're not doing the whole song and dance number like they did before.
No, but they were very excited. There was
Oh yeah.
They didn't do a revision of that song. Like
the only thing about it is the baby would be like me eating a marshmallow. I mean, the Goblin King is friggin' enormous.
Maybe all of those coincidences throw lots of extra calories into the baby.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Gina says we didn't need the dance number twice. So I guess, Gina, you weren't a fan of the dance number, I guess. Marshmallow delivered to you on a conveyor belt. Yeah, well.
that does feel like there's a YouTube video doing that.
Yeah. Well, there was Mr. Spock's marshmallow dispenser too.
Yes, from
Star Trek V.
Star Trek V. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which didn't you say that you bought one?
No, they had an offer for. It wasn't even. It was a marshmallow coming out. I've forgotten what. It's like not the biggest, but like maybe the second biggest marshmallow, brand you would see in the stores. They had a thing where you had to clip like something from the bag and you send it in with it was maybe like $5 plus shipping or something. It wasn't
right.
And it's sort of become a rare collectible. And part of me wishes I had ordered it, but also, like all the pictures I've seen, it was rather cheap. It was made out of.
I'm sure.
It was not that I expect to be made out of metal, but right. It was, it didn't look like it was something that would endure multiple use.
No, it was probably the marshmallow equivalent of a Pez dispenser.
I think a Pez dispenser might be better designed than that.
Probably, yeah.
But So listen.
Anyway,
I mean, let's face it. The goblins love. Apparently, goblins are a big fan of musical theater and drama, and spectacle because they had a band. Somebody wrote a song, unless that's the same song they do every time they eat a baby.
I don't know.
Like you sing "Happy Birthday" or something.
Yeah. Well, again, made me think a little bit of Labyrinth. Also, made me think a little bit of some of the things George Lucas did to Star Wars in his reboots. So, yeah, and it definitely. I like the fact that they used puppets versus.
Oh,
yeah,
I always really like practical thing rather than a CG thing, but
yeah, they were really good. Though I think Russell T Davies is doing a fantastic job, at least with the budget that he's got for this. Right. For this,
well, no, I'm thrilled he's back because it needs his touch. He's clearly got a good handle on it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so unfortunately, we won't see any more of them until the spring. Everything's coming out in the spring.
Sigh.
Well, not in Britain. I was about to say it was the strike, but the strike didn't
No,
affect
not in
anything.
Britain. Yeah,
So,
no.
but listen, the second episode of these specials with the last appearance of Bernard Cribbins, Donna's granddad,
Yeah.
who sadly passed away. That was shot that was shot in 2022.
Uh-huh.
So they're holding on to this stuff. They're doing
Right.
it like for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Observed it also had Time Bandits feel. Yeah, it had a bit of the Time Bandits and a very slightly Gilliam-esque.
Yeah.
That sort of like flying ship because it had wings too. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't just like a ship sailing through the clouds. It was a ship with these artificial wings.
Leathery or whatever. Dragon. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I quite enjoyed it.
Me
I'm
too.
I'm on board for this new Doctor,
Me too.
and I like it. I like the fact. Also, again, I'll say it again. I like the fact that he changes what he wears. There's an episode coming up which is tied to the Beatles, uh,
Oh.
and there because we've seen that there's a promo picture of the Doctor and Ruby dressed in mod clothing, and they both look
Yeah.
fucking fantastic. Is what you expect. So I think because the Doctor used to wear the same thing over. He would just be, he might put on a disguise, like be like take off a you take off a helmet. And be like, oh, it's the Doctor, not the guard, sort of
Right.
thing. But
Right.
for the most part, he just wore the same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
Presumably, his closet is just filled with the same outfit, like 20 times, or maybe Gallifreyan cloth, self cleans itself, and he doesn't need to do that. That would be lovely, wouldn't it, to not have to do
That
your
would be
laundry?
lovely.
But I do like his fashion sense, and the fact that he's like, well, I'm going to go clubbing, so I'm going to put on a kilt and a tank top.
Right.
Why not?
Why not?
So, yeah, I can't think of anything I really didn't like. I enjoyed it.
No, I can't either.
The gloves. I'll be interested. I wonder if he's going to have more gadgets this time, or whether that's a one-off, or whether we'll see the gloves again. Because it does feel like he's well. I'm always hanging off stuff, so I came up with this idea.
Right. Right.
I hope I hope you're right. I don't want him to become Tony Stark. I think you're right about that. I hope for me the Doctor should be the smartest person in any room he's in, even
Right.
if he sometimes pretends to be even if he or she sometimes pretends to be an idiot.
Trek Tonight exclusive right there.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah.
Very mod, both looking fabulous.
I love that he's got the fro.
Yeah, he's got
Yeah.
the fro and that very cool double-breasted suit, and she's got the
Yep.
black and white mod. She does look a lot like the actress who played Nurse Chapel, who
She does to me a
in the
lot.
first season when she's on her date with her F boy who
Right.
wants to make it things serious, but she's wearing a black and white dress in that episode.
Right.
It's gonna have that mod look. I'm particularly fond of that look, fashion wise for women. I think
Yeah.
that's a very very sexy look. But there we go. But I perhaps revealed too much. So, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I think especially the world being the way it is, which is, constantly on fire as it seems.
Yes.
It is one of the things I love about Doctor Who is it's ultimately, generally speaking, an uplifting show. It's a positive show. It's not about like, well, we gotta beat up these guys and take their stuff, or beat up these guys and stop beating somebody else up. It's like, the Doctor tries to. He almost all the bad guys he offers them is like, listen, you don't have to do this. Like even with the toy makers, like, come with me. We could be, we could travel the universe.
Right.
And he generally wants to see people redeemed. I don't think there's very few people who he's like writes off as evil, with the exception of maybe the Daleks or the Cybermen.
Right.
But even then, he's tried to save some of them. So I find that very comforting in this day and age. To compassion being the linchpin of a character,
Sure.
as Cliff says, unless you're the Goblin King.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And Cliff says, yes, well, fair enough. Did you guys talk about how in the beginning the Doctor seemed to be stalking Ruby like he was drawn to her? It feels like the Doctor is always drawn to people who are about to have something happen to them.
Right.
And whether that is, a function of the way Doctor Who scripts are written, or it's a function of his very nature. Because a lot of times he travels and he doesn't know where the TARDIS is sometimes maybe not the most reliable mode of transportation.
Right.
And I would like to point out, was he stalking Ruby or was he stalking the goblins?
Maybe, yeah.
Right. And they both happen to be.
The goblins just happen to be stalking Ruby.
Right.
Yeah, I think there, but I do feel like the Doctor is sort of drawn to trouble, or to oddities going on, because otherwise, we never had an episode of the Doctor Who where he's like, well, let's he's like, he just goes on like a little holiday, and it's like,
Meanwhile, 2 planets over, the Cybermen invade and the planet blows up.
Yeah.
That's...
Or like nothing's going on. Like he's like, oh, he keeps showing up. He's like, any problems? They're like, no, everything's fine. And he's like, oh great.
Yeah.
But I think the Doctor's happiest in the thick of things.
Yes.
Could be. Yeah.
So
now I found this, guys.
Oh yes.
I have no idea if that's genuine or not. It says BBC on it, so
it is. I've seen that in the trailer. That's from the trailer for this upcoming season. So yeah, there's a Beatles episode which I'm very excited about. Curious to see what's going on.
Yep.
It does feel like the Doctor will be like, I was the 5th Beatle.
Right.
Whatever. Like the way people used to say that, I was the 5th Beatle, and everybody's like, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that. There's a lot of really exciting stuff coming up, and I'm jazzed for it.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Gatwa is a fantastic Doctor.
Yeah, it should be really good. I'm looking forward to it.
I have high hopes for Mr. Gatwa.
What else do we have in the spring? We have that. We've got Discovery coming back in the spring.
Discovery's coming
back sometime in April. They've yet to give us a date.
Right.
But that seems to track with the way Paramount Plus has been doing business, because they'll like a few weeks before, maybe a month or 3 weeks before, they'll be like, oh, here's the date it's coming back.
Right.
So we will be covering Discovery's 5th and final season.
Yep.
Which for many fans is very sad, although they managed to outlast Enterprise by one full season.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And
and no matter what you think about Discovery, if it weren't for Discovery, we would not have Prodigy. We would not have Lower Decks. We would not have Strange New Worlds.
Right.
So even if you can't stand Discovery, you can thank Discovery that it's because of Discovery we get all these other shows.
I agree.
And I have to say I like Discovery. It's not my first pick.
Right.
Of Star Trek series, but I've never watched an episode and be like, some I like better than others.
Right.
And
no Orville for you.
It's the Orville is not. It is the Ponderosa in color.
Damn you from your logic. Anyway, next week we are talking.
I love you too, Cliff.
Yeah, next week we are talking about perhaps going and looking at Next Generation, which we have not really done at all. And we're still monkeying with what the format will be, but I can tell you this, we will most likely start with season 1. And the question is, how many episodes are we going to try to talk about? But we will post something about it in advance on the Facebook page so that you guys can catch up if you want to and say, oh, yeah, they're going to talk about maybe these episodes, and then you can review them for yourself, get yourself back up to speed to a 37-year-old show. And then we're going to talk about that. But we haven't really discussed a lot about Next Gen. So, and that was suggested by a friend who said, "Gosh, if you guys did Next Generation, I'd be there every week." I'm like, "Well, great." So
we'll see about that.
Next Gen is a show. There's a lot of also Next Gen is responsible for reinvigorating the Star Trek franchise.
Right.
Yes.
The movies have been coming out, and they were doing well, but all those guys were getting older,
right?
And continued to do so.
Yes.
So you needed like a new, fresh group of people, and maybe we'll discuss a little bit about people's initial reaction. As beloved as that show is now, it was not quite as beloved when it first showed up.
So much, no.
Yeah,
but I think
Cliff is asking if we ever did the animated series. We have done a lot of talking about the animated series.
That's true.
That's also on the list of things to explore. I think that I will say that the animated series suffered from the fact that it was, shorter episodes because it was like a half hour with commercial format. So it's like, 25 minutes back then. There weren't as many commercials as there are today. And it was a little too heady, I think, for the younger viewers that they were trying to sort of sell it to, and maybe not as developed as the older viewers.
And not many people know that there was actually a very brief push to transfer Star Trek, the animated series, from Saturday mornings, which is where it was, to an evening thing. But there weren't a lot of evening cartoons at the time, so it never went anywhere. But there was a thought, and I think the show might have done better if it had been an 8:00 time slot at night.
Maybe,
who knows?
I remember watching the show and quite enjoying it, and they did. There were some really good episodes. I think one of my favorites was I'm clearly tired. It was the episode where Spock goes back in time,
which is, I think, the first episode, isn't it?
It's one of the earliest.
One of the early episodes, yeah, where he goes.
We really got a sort of insight into Spock's childhood.
Yes.
And Mark Leonard came back to do the voice of Sarek,
right?
Which was always great. Mark Leonard seemed to be always game to come back as Sarek. And he was the Jeffrey Combs of the early.
I was just thinking that you beat me to it. I was just thinking
because he played a Vulcan, a Romulan, and a Klingon.
Yes.
In the motion picture, although it's impossible to tell under all that makeup.
Right.
And he was shouting in Klingon, so his dulcet tones were not as evident. But I would definitely, sometime in the future, when we're in between new Trek, the animated series would certainly be a fun thing to delve into because
and it's only a season and a half, so it's not like kind of episode. But,
and there's some silly episodes, but there are also some fun episodes, and some of the stuff from the animated show has turned up on Lower Decks, which is kind of neat.
Like the giant Spock, the skeleton,
the giant Spock of from the Ultimate Vulcan, and the alien who tested everybody, who was from that species was originated on the animated series. The Kazinti, which are a creation of Larry Niven, but showed up in the animated series. There's a Kazinti on the Cerritos, or different from the Cations. So,
yes,
there you go. We're definitely already going down a rabbit hole.
We sure are.
A wormhole.
All right, gents. Hey, listen, this was fun talking Doctor Who. I would love to. I would love to, when Doctor Who comes back, devote some time to that as well. And I guess that's it. I'm ready to roll out of here. But I hope everybody has a great New Year, and we will see you next week. And hopefully, with all the holidays out of the way and stuff, we'll be on our regular schedule Thursday nights. And Live long and prosper, Gina. Thank you. And we will see you all then. Hopefully this is the right one. I didn't mark these.
Find out.